It brings me absolutely no joy to do this, but I absolutely have to destroy Matt Walsh with facts and logic. This is Unsafe Media. I help you respond to the ideas of our age with wisdom and with virtue. And one of the most prominent ideas is the idea of aliens, and it is pernicious and stupid in the extreme. We have intellectuals today who will just guffaw over the idea that God actually exists, despite the fact that we have essential proof that he exists. Don't only consider the fact that the universe was it instantaneously began without any antecedent power or light or energy or matter or space or time, and that therefore we need some sort of entity that exists beyond all of those that has the productive capacity of generating an entire universe. Oh, I don't know. It sounds kind of like God. I don't know. But there's always some pedantic and overly anxious atheist in the comment section who's going to come in and go, well, technically we have, there's a model, the Carol Chen model that technically shows that it's possible for the past to be eternal. None of those pass all of the other tests, okay? It's not that just that they're technically incompatible with all the evidence. They fail either the second law of thermodynamics or they fail what we know about quantum mechanics. George Ellis had come up with one, but he said in no uncertain terms that his theory would entirely fall apart in the real world because quantum states are inherently unstable and therefore couldn't have existed for eternity. And yet, to even say something like that in intellectual circles, you will almost certainly get some sort of audible gasp or scoff, right? And yet, those very same intellectuals will look at a 7-pixel large dot zooming across the screen and go, that's absolute proof of interdimensional fifth dimension aliens that have the capacity to travel at superluminal speeds and travel here from distant galaxies. Guys, it's outrageous. The fact that people can be so skeptical of something so obvious and so comfortable with something so obviously dubious is an absolute commentary on the state of our intellectuals in the world today. And I have to unfortunately report to many people that Matt Walsh is one such intellectual. He is a great luminary of our age. I think people, because he is self-deprecating and leans into the dad persona so much, they tend to miss just how incredibly brilliant Matt Walsh is. Brevity is the soul of wit, and what I mean by that is that the greatest minds are able to either elaborate and elucidate a brand new idea with very simple concepts, or they're able to destroy entire worldviews with very simple concepts as well. I don't know if Matt Walsh was the first one to popularize it or if he was just the first one to really emphasize the fact that there is no definition of woman, and that by simply asking the question, what is a woman, you can utterly demolish and destroy an entire left-wing worldview, an entire wing of the Marxist family tree called critical queer theory and gender theory. But he did, and he did it immensely well and powerfully, and it's just that simple. With that one question, he's able to do so much. So he's an incredibly bright guy, and I want to give him full credit there. So I hate to have to take him down, but he is exceptionally excited about these recent revelations about aliens. Aliens are, when we talk about it, what I hope to help you get out of this is the ability to account for some bias, to account for your bias, and to work out whether or not an idea is plausible without ever even going to the evidence itself. But before you ever get to the evidence, you have to say, okay, how plausible is this? And plausibility tends to be a subjective measurement. It seems like it could be to me. It doesn't seem like it could be to you. How do we account for that bias? How do we think critically about these kinds of things? I'm 50-50 on the existence of aliens in the abstract. But now I want to dive into the idea a little more deeply and see, should we be 50-50 or should we be biased against it? Let's see.
If you don't know what we're starting 5 headlines with today, then you are not a real fan of this show. Well, why are we starting with it? Because it's big news. I mean, actually big, groundbreaking, should be earth-shattering news. A website called the Debrief has a report this week, actually just came out yesterday, with this headline: intelligence officials say U.S. has retrieved craft of non-human origin. Okay? Now, I want you to listen to this, and you're going to listen to it. So sit down and listen, all of you, damn it, and care about it. You listen to it and care, because this is important. Reading a little bit, it says a former intelligence official turned whistleblower has given Congress and the intelligence community inspector general extensive classified information about deeply covert programs that he says possess retrieved, intact, and partially intact craft of non-human origin.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead here. Just a little bit of spoiler warning. If you were to go look up this article, it has essentially no information backing up the claims that Gush, I can't remember what his name is, that the whistleblower is stating. It only has one or two sentences that even talk about the ideas. All the rest of the article is simply about the internal workings of these organizations and what they're saying about one another, and that's it. It's a super long article, and almost none of it discusses anything to do with aliens. Here's one of the only things it actually says about aliens.
Grush said the recoveries of partial fragments through and up to intact vehicles have been made for decades through present day by the government, its allies, and defense contractors.
Okay, so there is the thesis. Now, what's the evidence? What evidence do we have that these are going to be non-human intelligence created vehicles?
Analysis has determined that the objects retrieved are of exotic origin based on the vehicle morphologies and material science testing and the possession of unique atomic arrangements and radiological signatures.
That is one of the most important statements. How do we know that these are extraterrestrial? It's because of their unique morphologies, meaning they're shaped weird. Okay, maybe the controls wouldn't be well suited for humans, or maybe they would be impossible for humans. They don't explain, right? If I knew for certain that the morphology absolutely proved that that the pilot inside this thing could not have been human, that's what I would say. I would say that it's way too small, or that there's a chair in it, but the controls are 10 feet away, and so it has to be controlled by something way too big. Or I would say that the molecular composition is not found anywhere on this planet, or instead of putting it in these vague ways that make you think, oh, are you being serious?
And actually, there's more to it. This whistleblower had an exclusive interview on News Nation last night, which I can tell you that it was a 10-minute segment. Again, well worth watching. Go to News Nation, go to their YouTube channel. They have it up. I can tell you, I gathered my entire family. In fact, I got my kids. My kids had gone to bed, and I had them come out of their rooms because someone sent me this. I didn't know the guy did an interview on News Nation, and so my kids came out of their rooms after they'd already gone to bed. So and I got my wife to gather around, and I said, come on, kids, come on, family. It's a family moment. We're going to watch this interview. You're going to remember this moment for the.
I love the commitment here. Can you imagine having 6 kids, putting them to bed, and then getting them out of bed? It's a Herculean effort to get my 3 kids in bed. I can only imagine having 6. This is incredible. His commitment is commendable.
Rest of your life. And we watched the interview, and they were bored by it. Like they didn't even care. My wife started wandering away in the middle of it. I said, "Where are you going? It's only 10 minutes. Can you spare 10 minutes to learn about aliens?"
I've never respected her more. Her definition of a woman is spot on at the end of what is a woman. Her shenanigans with the walrus are kind of a downer, kind of lower my estimation of her moral character. But this does the opposite. It restores all my faith in Mrs. Walsh.
I won't subject you to 10 minutes, but here's 1 minute with some additional information about what this guy says the government has recovered. Listen.
If you're right, if you're telling us the truth, everyone, the entire American public, has been lied to for decades.
Yeah, there's a sophisticated disinformation campaign targeting the U.S. populace, which is extremely unethical and immoral.
You are saying to the human race, for the first time, an official intelligence representative at a high level from the US government is saying publicly, we are not alone.
We're definitely not alone.
Just a real quick minor thing here. He's a whistleblower, so he's no longer an official member of the government. Now, that plays into his credibility, right? That he's willing to throw away his career for this. So that's an important. I'm not knocking him. I just want to say this is not an official from the government saying this.
Absolutely, the data points empirically that we're not alone. Yeah.
Do we have bodies? Do we have species of?
Well, naturally, when you recover something that's either landed or crashed, sometimes you encounter dead pilots. And Believe it or not, as fantastical as that sounds, it's true.
Okay, listen. Remember just a couple minutes ago, whenever the proof that this was of non-human origin was the fact that it had a weird morphology. They had to make it sound more scientific than it was. Instead of saying it's shaped weird, instead of saying it didn't seem like it was designed for humans, they had to say, well, it has an interesting morphology, and the radiological signature is technically a little bit different than something that we normally see. Why wouldn't you lead with the alien bodies? Like, how insane is this? How do you know that it's an alien spacecraft? Because there's an alien in it. That would be the headline, my friend. It's not that we have, well, the evidence seems to imply, technically speaking, that when you total it all together, the weird shape of the craft, the radiological signature, it seems a little bit different than the way humans would normally design a thing. Oh, and by the way, there was a gray thing inside of it that had general intelligence. That's the headline. The fact that it's not the headline tells you that there's something deeply fishy with this story. There is something profoundly dubious about the way this is being presented. All right. This is not the kind of thing that you should bite onto hook, line, and sinker. Now, in order to sort of account for our biases, let me help you. This is a genuine practice that we should apply to all sorts of things. Okay. So if you hear a thing, any story you hear, you're going to be bringing your own ideas and your worldview and your opinions and your desires. All of this will color the way that you initially hear the story. So how do we, as critical thinkers and not critical theorists, as critical thinkers, how do we account for our bias when it comes to simply engaging or measuring plausibility? Here's one technique that I want to encourage you to do. Play out the entire scenario. Don't just take it as aliens could exist out there. And maybe we have some sightings of their, you have UFOs or whatever. Rather, I want you to say this. I want you to go, okay, what is the entire story here? And then when I look at it in its entirety, I'm able to better assess, is this something that's plausible or not? So let's play out the entire scenario of aliens. First off, you have to have another planet that is habitable. For it to be extraterrestrial, it has to come from some other planet. Well, most planets are not habitable. When we say most, we're talking about the vast majority, way past 50%. So people will say, well, there's hundreds of billions of galaxies and hundreds of billions of planets and or stars in each of those galaxies. And so, well, let's just do that math. It's 10 to the 9th times 10 to the 9th. So you got 10 to the 18th. Okay. Then we start looking at what are the chances of life developing and evolving to a state of general intelligence like we have, in fact, even beyond what we have, if it is higher, sorry, I should say lower. If it's lower than one chance in 10 to the 18th, or let's just give yourself even more chances. Let's say it's a trillion um, galaxies with a trillion stars in each of them. Okay, so 10 to the 12th times 10 to the 12th. So we got 10 to the 24th. If the chances of something far more advanced than us evolving spontaneously and coming and visiting us is below 1 in 10 to the 24th, then this is an implausible story, utterly and preposterously. So let's talk about some of the things that you need. First off, most of the planets are uninhabitable. It simply could not sustain life of any kind. And when you start thinking about it, it's not simply, we used to think that all a planet needed was to be close enough to the sun and to be warm and not too close to be hot. And basically, we measured it based on liquid water, and then it had to have liquid water. I'm going to make it more general than that and still help you understand how complex and outrageous this is. The planet does have to be in the habitable zone, and depending on the star, that is a different distance. Okay, so you have to have the right kind of star. You have to have the right kind of planet in the right zone. It has to have, even if we don't say liquid water, it has to have some sort of solvent. If everything is frozen, there won't be enough chemical reactions occurring for life to occur. Then you have to have an atmosphere, the correct atmosphere, and you have to have some way of shielding the radiation from the star. People will go, well, for the life that we know of, maybe this life could evolve with all that kinds of radiation. Radiation is the type of radiation I'm talking about is ionizing radiation. It's not just destructive to cells; it's destructive to atoms. It knocks electrons off of the atom. It ionizes them. Life can't exist in that level of instability. You wouldn't have time for nature to select for those that could survive in that kind of environment. You need to have lots of chemical reactions, which is why you need some sort of liquid solvent that facilitates and catalyzes those types of chemical reactions. And then not only do you have to have those elements, you have to have lots of heavy elements. You have to have carbon, and you have to have iron, you have to have oxygen, and you have to have fill in the blank. You have to have all of your heavier elements, and you have to have some way of circulating those. So on Earth, we have plate tectonics that helps stir up heavier elements that settle down deeper into the Earth's core, or into the mantle and into the crust and whatnot. I'm not saying that these planets have to have plate tectonics per se, but they have to have some way of circulating these elements so that you can have the interactions that are important. And then once you have all the right ingredients, somehow they have to come together into something like a self-replicating molecule. Right now we have DNA, but there could be some other form of life that doesn't have DNA or RNA. But it has to have something like information. It has to have something like the DNA molecule, and that has to be formed. And the chances of that being formed are nigh on miraculous. The chances, Dr. James Tour, one of the most respected scientists alive today, working in one of the most complex fields today, talks extensively on his YouTube channel about the fact that there is no mechanism, no even proposed mechanism that could come even close to providing an explanation for abiogenesis, life occurring. So we have to have the right star, the right distance, the right planet, the right combinations of molecules. And then once you have the right combinations of molecules, you have to have some mechanism that then joins us together in a pattern that can then self-replicate and then evolve eventually into life. Then once you have life, you have billions of years of evolution, and you need there to be no cataclysmic event like the Earth or the planet exploding because of let's say a solar flare that utterly eviscerates all life, or a massive meteor utterly decimating all life on the planet. You have to have the right combinations of planets in the solar system so as to not pull it far off its axis or off its tilt. There are so many complex interactions for this to go just right, to then provide billions of years of stable evolution in order to get to a place where you have something like intelligence. And then once you have something like intelligence, which is not a guarantee, that there's no guarantee of evolution, that evolution will push the organisms towards intelligence. But then once you get to intelligence, they never kill themselves off, or they never get stunted in their intelligence. They never get just smart enough to just keep surviving and essentially live primitively forever. And then you have to get to a place where they not only have the intelligence in a competitive environment to travel through space, essentially, potentially traveling at superluminal speeds, being able to cross entire chasms, throughout the galaxy, or maybe multiple galaxies. They have that intelligence, but they never went to war and used that intelligence to wipe themselves out. I mean, we almost killed ourselves numerous times in the Cold War. You're telling me that this other planet never did as well? And that they somehow learn to work cooperatively. All of these are independent probabilities. So you have to multiply the probability of the right star times the probability of a planet in the right zone, multiply by the number of those that have something like liquid solvent, multiply that times the probability of having all the right elements, the heavier elements, multiply that by the chances of abiogenesis, then multiply that by the chances of evolution leading to general intelligence, then multiply that by the chances of that general intelligence working cooperatively and traveling through space, multiply that by the chances of them learning how to travel beyond the speed of light and able to get to us in less than thousands and maybe even millions or billions of years. And then all of that happens for these super intelligent beings to come here and evade all of our radars and all of our cameras. There's 6 billion cameras smartphones on this planet. All of them have essentially 4K quality video, and none of us have ever captured any of these super intellect genius aliens except our CC quality cameras. It's always the blurriest, fuzziest nonsense. It's a couple of pixels zooming across the screen that could be and have been explained as camera tricks and tricks of light. Now, once you work that entire story together, you have an intellectual who guffaws at the existence of God. But then they go, and Matt Walsh does not. Matt Walsh is a devout Catholic. But so many intellectuals who will go, oh yeah. That little thing on the screen has me convinced of that massive story. That's outrageous. Now, I do want to jump to one more thing that Matt Walsh has to say here, because there are conservatives who push back against this, because they never give the story the light of day. And we should not do that. You should have an open mind, not open so much that your brain falls out. Your G.K. Chesterton says that your mind should be open for the same reason your mouth is open, so it can close again on something more solid. So we should be open to the existence of aliens, and there's nothing about faith or religion that would keep you from doing that. In fact, because the story of aliens, of highly intelligent, generally intelligent aliens, is so outrageous and so against all of the odds, this would actually give you great reason to believe that God exists. You would have, Seneca says that we are minor intellects who derive our intellect from the super intellect. If there is other intelligent beings out in the universe, that is evidence that there is a supreme intellect that has designed a universe and is potentially intervening into it in order to bring about these intelligences. So there's no reason for the Christian or the deist or the theist to feel uncomfortable with the implications of these extraterrestrial aliens. Some people would say, oh, well, that would just be evidence that it permeates all of the world and it must be super easy. No. The fact is, we know a lot about what is required for life of any form to form, and we know that it is highly improbable. It is highly improbable. So if you find other evidences that it's out there, then you just have evidence that there is something like an intelligent designer.
I think that is the case for some people. Like, you could literally see them land right in front of you, and you would still say, "Oh, it's AI. It's mind control." It's like you would go to any other explanation, but that. And I think that's because there's a large portion, especially of conservatives, who think, because conservatives tend to be more religious, and who think that they can't believe this because it would call their faith into question. But that's not true. Let me relieve you of that burden. There's nothing about the potential existence of life elsewhere in the universe that would call your faith into question. It just, we know the universe is massive, and there's lots of things going on in the universe we don't know about. And we probably can't even understand, because God has created a universe that is much bigger and more complicated and more amazing than maybe you give it credit for. I don't see how that calls anything. Now, it raises questions that we can't answer all. It raises all kinds of questions, religious questions, scientific questions that we can't answer because some of this stuff is above our pay grade. But who says we have to?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I said. If you were to come across an arrowhead in the ground and you say, I know that the process of sedimentation doesn't produce this shape rock with the perfect little notches to go onto an arrow and whatever. Therefore, I know that this was the product of intelligence. In fact, the more of those you found, the more convinced you would be. I mean, there's really a small chance that arrowhead, that enough rocks smashed into this one by accident through a tornado that it formed into something that looks like an arrowhead. But if I found in the ground 400 or 500 arrowheads in one small area, along with a bunch of pottery shards, then it would be illogical of me to infer anything other than intelligence. And because we know that the production of intelligence is so statistically inconceivably small, far greater than the 1 to the 10 to the 24th number of planets out there. That we should then, therefore, if we found extraterrestrial intelligence, we should infer that there is in fact a God who prefers intelligence, who likes intelligence. And just as the Bible actually says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and that God creates all things for his glory. All was created for him and by him, and they all exist to him. So with that being said, Matt Walsh, I have to say that today, unfortunately, you're canceled. That's it for today. This is Unsafe Media, and I am Ryan Martin. If you haven't joined the Patreon yet, you're almost certainly the kind of person who thinks that ancient aliens built the pyramids. So go ahead and join the Patreon, and like, share, subscribe, everything else. And until next time, trust God and keep your powder dry.